On a cold winter night in 2025, a house suddenly erupted in flames, shattering the quiet of the evening. Police rushed to the scene, initially treating it as a routine accident. But when a man emerged from the chaos, it quickly became clear that this was no ordinary fire. Behind the smoke and flames lay a secret buried for 20 years, quietly coming to light for the first time.
Please hurry. It's 2 Blake Street. There's a fire.
Okay.
Oh my God, there's a fire. I'm trying to...
Ma'am, what's
2
on
Blake
fire?
Street. The TV, I don't know. My son, his stepson is in his room, and I don't know. He did something with the TV. I was sleeping. I fell asleep.
See flames or smoke?
Yes, come on, Steph, come on.
Okay, can you get...
Yes, we need an ambulance, please.
Okay.
Please, we need an ambulance.
Ma'am, all right, you said something's on fire and now you need an ambulance. What's going on there?
Yes, his room. The TV in his room.
Did he get injured? Is he on fire?
Yes, he's injured. Please, send the ambulance.
Ma'am, I'm going to send the ambulance. I need to know what's going on and why they're going out there. Where is he injured?
I don't know. He's I don't know. I don't know. He's kind of passed out. He's out of it. Please.
It was Monday, February 17th, 2025. At 8:42 p.m. darkness had settled over the city, and the streets were nearly deserted. In the midst of this quiet, the local police department received an urgent call. On the other end of the line, a woman's voice trembled with panic. She reported a fire and pleaded repeatedly for an ambulance to be dispatched immediately. About 5 minutes later, officers arrived at the scene. Body cam footage shows that firefighters were already battling the flames when the police got there. The officers moved around to the side of the house, tapping on windows to alert anyone inside to evacuate. Soon, a woman emerged from the front door, clutching a small dog, shouting frantically. The police quickly approached and began assessing the situation.
Who's in the house? Who else is in here?
My stepson is in here.
How many other people?
Help him out.
Listen,
That's it. I have 2 cats.
Everybody's out?
Yes.
But your stepson's still inside?
Yeah, he's right here.
Okay,
yes.
come out. Come down the road. Come on, come on.
The woman on the scene was the same person who had placed the emergency call. Officers first calmed her down and then escorted her to a safe area. At that moment, movement caught their attention behind her. A firefighter was carrying a man out of the house and immediately onto a waiting ambulance. This man was the stepson trapped inside the fire. His condition was shocking. Extremely emaciated, hair tangled and matted, clothes caked in filth, and a stench that was hard to describe. When paramedics lifted his shirt to examine him, his ribs protruded sharply under his skin. Despite his frailty, he remained barely conscious and even whispered an apology, admitting he hadn't bathed in over a year. Under the escort of a police officer, he was quickly transported to the hospital for treatment. Throughout the ride, he spoke almost non-stop, as if the years of suppressed fear and anguish had finally found a voice. The man confessed to the police that he had started the fire himself, using flammable materials in a desperate attempt to escape. The reason was almost unimaginable. He claimed that he had been locked in a room since childhood, and this fire was his final act of desperate self-rescue. Hearing this, the officers were stunned. For them, it was the first time they had encountered a case where arson was driven not by malice, but by a plea for survival. Determined to verify the story, they immediately turned to question his stepmother, seeking to piece together the truth.
Was the door locked on his room or no?
No.
Okay, is it normally locked?
No.
Okay, it's normally open?
No, yeah.
And he has free reign to go out of there whenever he wants?
Yeah.
Okay. Does he have any mental challenges or anything? What is he?
Under questioning, the man's stepmother stated that she had been asleep at the time of the fire and only woke up when she smelled smoke, rushing to call him out of the room. On the surface, her account seemed consistent. She also firmly insisted that her stepson's door had never been locked. Her statements prompted the police to begin doubting the man's earlier claims. When asked whether he had any mental health issues, the stepmother admitted that she had always thought he was a little unusual, but her husband had opposed taking him for evaluation. As a result, no formal diagnosis was ever made, and the underlying cause remained unknown. With these uncertainties, the case grew increasingly complex. Could this incident have been triggered by a mental health crisis rather than a deliberate act? Determined to find clarity, the police launched a thorough on-site investigation, examining the fire damage for clues that might reveal the truth. The house was a two-story detached residence, covering roughly 890 square meters, considered quite spacious for the area. Inside, the first thing that met the eye was an open layout connecting the living room with the kitchen and dining area, separated by a small bar counter. In the living room stood a large metal cage, likely used for a dog, while the kitchen was modest in size with a small bathroom adjacent to it. The first floor also featured two bedrooms. The one on the left had bright pink walls covered with posters, and the one on the right contained a cabinet specifically for displaying dolls, giving the space a lively, lived-in feel. Overall, the first floor showed little sign of fire damage and remained relatively orderly. Climbing the wooden staircase to the second floor, the walls were visibly blackened by heavy smoke, a stark contrast to the more intact lower level. The second floor was primarily composed of the man's bedroom, his stepmother's bedroom, and a bathroom, all showing clear signs of fire damage. The bathroom's toilet was caked with grime, and the bathtub contained wooden planks, indicating it had long been unused. At the end of the hallway was a small, cramped room. This was the man's bedroom and the very origin of the fire. The walls and door frame were charred, and the bed was cluttered with various items. Inside the room, police discovered partially burned papers, and just outside the door, they found a sliding bolt lock, capable of securing the door from the outside. These findings appeared to lend credibility to the man's earlier claims. Police decided to question the stepmother again, but she refused to answer any further questions, citing legal counsel. Further investigation revealed that the man's father had passed away a year earlier. At this point, it seemed that the only way to uncover the truth was through the man himself. What no one could have anticipated was that the story he would tell was far from a typical family dispute. It was a shocking truth capable of rattling the entire nation. For privacy reasons, the man's real name has not been released. We will refer to him as John. He is 32 years old, stands 175 centimeters tall, yet weighs only 31 kilograms. For a man of his height, a typical adult weight would range between 57 and 76 kilograms, meaning John weighs barely half of what would be considered normal, appearing extremely emaciated. Doctors diagnosed him with severe malnutrition and pronounced muscle wasting. His body mass index, BMI, registers at just 11. By comparison, a BMI below 16 is considered indicative of starvation, and below 13 can be life-threatening. Medical professionals warned that if John continued living under these conditions, his life could be at serious risk within just a few months. In addition, the medical team has stressed that John must be extremely careful to avoid refeeding syndrome, a potentially life-threatening metabolic disorder that can occur when someone who has suffered prolonged starvation or severe malnutrition begins eating again too quickly. Because his body is no longer able to process nutrients normally, a sudden intake of food could trigger electrolyte imbalances with serious, even fatal consequences. It's also worth noting that at the time of the incident, both John and his stepmother were unemployed, relying solely on welfare benefits as their only source of income. This raises troubling questions about whether poverty played a role in this tragedy. In response, authorities launched a deeper investigation into the family, seeking to uncover the full truth behind what had happened. John's father, Craig, worked as a shipping clerk at a local manufacturing company. According to property records, he purchased the family home in 1991 for $100,000. John's stepmother, Kimberly, now 56, had only one known job in her past, working as a retail clerk at a nearby shopping center. After marrying, the couple had 2 daughters, and the 5 of them lived together under one roof. With both parents earning modest incomes, they repeatedly relied on credit cards to cover household expenses, accumulating significant debt over the years. Their mortgage also added financial strain. Over a 5-year period, the couple even filed for bankruptcy multiple times in an attempt to reduce some of their obligations. Clearly, the family was under considerable economic pressure. Strangely, among the 3 children, Only John had dropped out of school and stayed at home. The couple continued to pay $450 per month for their 2 daughters' tuition, and neither girl appeared to have any health issues. The 2 spacious, lavishly decorated rooms downstairs served as their bedrooms. Just a single wall separated John from them, yet his life was completely different. Even within the family's budget priorities, pets and cigarettes took precedence over John's basic survival needs. Records indicate the family spent $80 a month on their pets and $180 on cigarettes. In body cam footage captured after the fire, when firefighters carried John past her, Kimberly showed little concern, simply remarking to the officers, "My dog is shaking." Clearly, John's severe malnourishment and the circumstances behind the fire were far more complex than they appeared on the surface. Sometime after the incident, John's physical condition began to improve. He also spoke with the police, recounting his life story, a harrowing and almost unbelievable account of the abuse and neglect he endured from a young age. John revealed that although he had lived with his stepmother, Kimberly, since childhood, she had treated him very poorly. Starting at the age of 11, he was confined for long periods in a tiny room of less than 7 square meters. The room had no air conditioning or heating, bitterly cold in winter and stiflingly hot in summer. On top of that, Kimberly strictly limited his food. John's daily intake was often just a few sandwiches or leftover cold dishes from other family members. For him, hunger had become an almost constant part of life. At first, he was only locked in the room at night, but when he turned 12, he could no longer bear the hunger. He snuck out to the kitchen in search of food. Kimberly discovered the empty food packaging and flew into a rage. From that day on, John was confined in his room nearly all day, with a lock installed on the door to prevent any further escape. Over time, Kimberly's control over John grew even more severe. The lock on his door escalated from a simple chain to a sliding bolt, and wooden panels were added to the door frame, ensuring it could not be opened from the inside. Each day, John received only 2 or 3 sandwiches and 2 small bottles of water, passed through the door crack. John recalled, "My whole life felt like it was hidden away, kept a secret. Few people ever visited the house, and when guests did come, his stepmother would warn him to remain completely silent." The only time of the year John was allowed any freedom was Halloween. He would dress up in various costumes, blend in with other children, and go door to door for candy, barely raising any suspicion. He remembered his last Halloween at the age of 12, when he dressed as a firefighter. Aside from that, the last time he left the house was around the age of 14, helping his father take out the trash. After his father passed away, the only time John was allowed outside was for a brief 1-minute walk with the dog each day. John's daily life inside the house was strictly regimented. He would go to bed at 7:30 p.m., wake up between 3 o'clock and 4:30 a.m., and would not be called out by his stepmother Kimberly to perform household chores until around 8 a.m. This task could take anywhere from 15 minutes to 2 hours, and it was the only time John was allowed to leave his bedroom. In other words, he spent more than 22 hours each day confined to a dim, cramped room. Although the bathroom on the 2nd floor was just a few steps away, John was forbidden from using it. Left with no other option, he devised his own methods for basic hygiene inside the room. He created a makeshift system, collecting liquids in a bottle connected to a straw that led out through a small hole in the window, and using newspaper to gather solid waste, tying it up with threads from old clothing, and disposing of it later when he was briefly allowed out for chores. As for bathing, John said he could only wash himself once every 1 to 2 years. To maintain minimal cleanliness, he would save small amounts of drinking water each day and use it to wipe down his body once the bottle was full. By the time he was discovered, John had gone over a year without a proper bath and 3 years without a haircut, with thick layers of dirt covering both his body and hair. Since being confined to the room, John had never received any medical checkups. Even when he experienced pain, he could only rely on aspirin for relief. Years without dental care had left his teeth in a severely deteriorated state, making every meal a painful ordeal. Despite being nearly cut off from the outside world, John did not give up on learning. Each year, he received 3 or 4 books, and to understand their contents, he would use a dictionary to look up words he didn't know. Yet, most of the time, the long hours spent alone in his room were unbearably boring. Originally, there had been a black and white television in the room, the same one his stepmother had mentioned in her 911 call. At first, he could use it to access information about the outside world and occasionally for entertainment. But as technology advanced, the TV signal was discontinued, leaving it unusable. After that, John relied solely on a radio to stay connected with the world. He told the police that he would use broadcasts to track the date and time, clinging to this faint link to the outside simply to avoid losing his grasp on reality. When asked why he never told anyone about his situation or sought help from the outside world, John explained that doing so would likely result in being confined even longer, with even less food. This fear is also why he never dared to open his bedroom window. His stepmother had once threatened him, saying, "If you tell anyone, you won't see the sunlight again." John recalled discovering his stepmother had hidden weapons while he was cleaning, which only deepened his fear and made him fully believe her threats. 2 years before the fire, he found a lighter in the pocket of his father's old coat and secretly hid it, marking the beginning of his escape plan. Later, while doing chores, he noticed a bottle of hand sanitizer labeled as flammable and brought it back to his room, preparing for the moment he might need it. On the day of the incident, just like any other morning, Kimberly let John out of his room at 8 a.m., instructing him to wash the car. He was given 2 sandwiches and 2 small bottles of water before being locked back in his room. At 7 p.m., Kimberly asked him to replace the lights on a small Christmas tree at the bar, but he was unsuccessful. Around 8 p.m., he heard the door to Kimberly's bedroom close, signaling she was preparing to sleep. At that very moment, John made a resolute decision. He would no longer endure the life of daily confinement. John ignited the hand sanitizer and paper with the lighter. The flames spread quickly, and he began stomping his feet and shouting for help. Kimberly woke up to the smoke filling the second floor and immediately opened John's bedroom door. As the fire rapidly spread, the two made their way downstairs. Along the way, John stumbled and fell, and Kimberly told him to go wash his face in the first-floor bathroom. But John knew her intentions weren't about his safety. She just didn't want the firefighters to see him in a disheveled state and become suspicious. Determined, John stayed on the floor, refusing to get up. He firmly believed that the only way to truly escape his nightmare was to be rescued directly by the firefighters. Kimberly then called 911 and ran out of the house carrying her dog. When the firefighters entered, they found John curled up under the dining table, waiting to be saved. Meanwhile, Kimberly's 2 daughters also arrived at the scene. John heard Kimberly shouting at them, demanding that they remove the locks from his bedroom door to prevent anyone from discovering what had happened. After learning about John's 2-decade-long ordeal, the Watertown police chief remarked, "It's horrifying to think that someone could treat another human being this way, especially when it's your own family or parents who are supposed to provide care and protection. In my 33 years of law enforcement, this is the most egregious and shocking abuse I have ever seen." Yet there remained a question that baffled the authorities. John had been imprisoned in his room for 20 years. How could no one have noticed his absence? Even his father, living under the same roof, seemingly unaware that his own son was enduring such torment. As the investigation unfolded, the revelations that followed would shock everyone even further. John's biological mother, Tracy, began dating his father, Craig, at a young age. When she was just 17, she gave birth to a daughter. However, the Department of Children and Families determined that the infant had suffered from shaken baby syndrome, a condition caused when a caregiver shakes a baby violently out of anger or improper soothing, resulting in brain injury or other severe harm. As a result, Tracy lost custody of her first child. 3 years later, Tracy gave birth to John. Over time, her relationship with Craig deteriorated. At the age of 20, with almost no savings, she believed John would be better off living with his father. When John was 6 months old, she formally transferred custody to Craig, marking the last time she ever saw him. A little over a year later, Craig married Kimberly. From the age of 3, John's food intake was strictly controlled. Long-term hunger and lack of water forced him to survive by whatever means he could. At school, he would search through trash bins for food and, in moments of extreme thirst, even drank from toilets. John repeatedly stole food from classmates, which drew the attention of teachers. The elementary school principal recalled that as early as the late 1990s, John appeared unusually thin and almost always hungry. Teachers often paid out of their own pockets to provide him lunch and reported concerns about his well-being to the Department of Children and Families more than 20 times. In 2004, when John was 11 years old, his parents brought him home, and he never returned to school. When the principal and teachers inquired about him, they were told that John was attending another school, but no records could be found. Later, they were told he was being homeschooled. In reality, he had been completely confined to his room. The principal even asked a neighbor to keep an eye on John, but the response remained the same: he's being homeschooled. John's classmates also contacted the Department of Children and Families, expressing concern after not seeing him for a long time, fearing he might be in danger. As a result, the department asked the police to conduct a welfare check. According to the police report, John's stepmother, Kimberly, claimed this was already the second visit from the agency to check on him. The officers who inspected the home reported that John appeared healthy and seemed in good spirits, and they left shortly afterward. However, it wasn't long before the police received another call, this time from John's father, Craig. He claimed that he and his family were being harassed and suspected that John's elementary school principal had repeatedly contacted various agencies, attempting to intervene in the family. But since Craig could not provide evidence to support this claim, the matter ultimately went unresolved. When John's former principal learned the truth about his situation, he expressed deep regret. "We had been worried about this child since he was 5 years old. You could sense something was wrong, and the problem was serious. We all knew it, and we reported it multiple times, but no one took action. That, to me, is the greatest tragedy of this entire case." According to John, his father, stepmother, 2 younger sisters, and even his late grandmother were all aware that he had been confined to his room for years, but none of them intervened or offered help. The only person who genuinely cared about him was his uncle. The uncle recalled that he had not seen John since 2004. In his memory, John was a frail and gentle boy. For several consecutive Christmas Eves, he had visited John's family and inquired about him, but Kimberly would always interrupt or even turn him away. 10 years before the case came to light, having heard nothing about John, the uncle grew increasingly concerned and sought the help of a private investigator. The investigator advised him to check public records for any information, but the search came up empty. It was as if John had vanished from the world, trapped in that upstairs room with no one knowing. Neighbors living on the same street were left in shock when the case emerged. One man, who had lived there for 8 years, recalled seeing John's parents and 2 daughters, but had never known that the family even had a son.
And you live right next door to the house?
Correct.
And how long have you lived here?
I've lived here for about 4 years. I've known my wife for almost 10. So I've been coming here, knowing my wife for almost 10 years.
Okay. And did you know of anything, hear of anything next door?
Nope.
Did you ever see the woman, or you obviously never saw the kid?
I obviously saw the woman, coming in passing, but when I was asked about a son, I was shocked. I never even heard of or knew that there was a son until my stepdaughter told me the story about when she was sitting on the swing and she saw a little boy up in the window, or what she thought was a little boy. It turns out that was 15 years ago, so he must have been about 22 at the time. He just appeared to be a little boy.
It's worth noting that, unbeknownst to John, there was one person quietly searching for him: his maternal half-sister, Cece. Cece revealed that she had been placed in foster care from a young age and was separated from John early in life. Their mother had once brought John to her home, marking the only time the siblings ever met. As she grew older, Cece tried to track down her brother through social media platforms like Facebook and regularly checked court records and other public databases, but she never found any trace of him. It wasn't until the case made headlines that their mother, Tracy, reached out with a message. The emaciated young man featured in the reports was her son. Cece could hardly believe it. Tracy expressed deep anger over the suffering her son endured for so many years. She also hopes to reconnect with him, while fully understanding that John is now an adult and will make his own decisions regarding their relationship. Less than a month after the incident, Kimberly was arrested, facing multiple charges, including first-degree assault, second-degree kidnapping, and unlawful restraint. The following day, he posted $300,000 bail and was temporarily released. Those who knew Kimberly, his classmates and colleagues, seemed unsurprised by the arrest. They described him as difficult to get along with, frequently dishonest, and prone to arguments. 2 weeks later, the case proceeded to a hearing at the Waterbury Superior Court. John was unable to attend due to his fragile health, so the prosecution relayed his statements on his behalf.
This victim is afraid. This victim lives in fear. I introduced myself to the victim, explained who I was. His first question in this fear is, why is she out walking around when I was locked up in a room for 20 years?
At the hearing, the defense denied all charges and entered a plea of not guilty, claiming that Kimberly's late husband should bear responsibility for the situation. John, however, stated that on occasions when Kimberly was out, his father would allow him to come out of the room to watch TV or do chores in the yard, and that on weekends he was sometimes given more time outside. Later, after his father suffered a stroke and became confined to a wheelchair, he required Kimberly's care and could no longer intervene in her decisions. Following his father's death, John's restrictions became even stricter, leaving him confined to his room nearly all day. After the hearing, in an interview with the media, the defense attorney emphasized that a locked door does not automatically constitute unlawful restraint. 8 months after the incident, the defense filed a motion requesting access to John's new identity, address, and medical records. The prosecution strongly opposed this, arguing that John remained terrified of Kimberly and that the high level of media attention could impede his psychological recovery. Ultimately, the judge ruled that Kimberly could review John's medical records and new identity information, but that none of this information could be made public or disclosed. The case is still in the pretrial phase, with both sides organizing and exchanging evidence in preparation for the formal trial. At present, the defense continues to maintain a plea of not guilty. If they refuse any plea agreement, the case is likely to proceed to a jury trial, which is not expected to begin until the summer of 2026, or possibly later. Since the incident, the case has sparked widespread attention and discussion. Many online commentators have argued that the Department of Children and Families failed in its duty, contributing to this tragedy. In response, the department stated that between 1996 and 2005, they visited John's home 6 times, occasionally even after hours. Staff reported that the house appeared clean, food was adequate, and John himself indicated that everything was normal. They also spoke with John's pediatrician at the time, who reported no abnormalities. Based on the information available then, the department said they did not have sufficient evidence to confirm that John was being mistreated, and therefore could not remove him from the home. Some have also pointed out that this case exposed a legal loophole in Connecticut. Parents can simply submit a basic withdrawal notice to a school to take a child home, yet there is no follow-up system or legal mechanism to ensure the child's safety. 2 months after the incident, John made his first public statement. He revealed that he was choosing a new name for himself, a name under which he could take back control of his life and his future. His physical and mental condition had already shown significant improvement, and he even celebrated his 32nd birthday with the very first birthday party of his life. John expressed deep gratitude to everyone who had extended a helping hand and urged those who were aware of his experiences to cooperate with law enforcement and support the pursuit of justice. That a life could be trapped in darkness for 20 years highlights how much our systems still need improvement. At the same time, John's survival and ongoing recovery remind us of the fragility, yet resilience of human life and hope. His rebirth is not a coincidence. It is the result of combined forces: societal awareness, media coverage, charitable aid, and the empathy of ordinary people. May this story not only shock us but also serve as a catalyst for change, motivating us to ensure that no child ever becomes another overlooked victim of systemic neglect.